Hey, welcome to Ed, a podcast about the teaching life. This is Conversation 68, and I am your host, Shane Lawrence. Ed is a proud member of the Alberta Podcast Network powered by ATB. And joining me this week is Caleb Enfield. Thank you very much. Right. Well, hey, how are you?
I'm well, man. Thank you. How are you doing?
I'm doing okay. I'm not going to lie. I'm a little tired, but, that's all right.
Me too. I'm right on the tail end of fall break, and I always get more tired during the breaks because I try to do more, to use my free time a little bit more, Yeah.
It's kind of like you kind of sprint. You're like, okay, I got to get all this done now. Go. And then, yeah.
Yeah. And well, no, I just, I stayed up late and woke up early and just really tried to get more hours out of my day than I normally do, because normally I'm in bed by 9 o'clock. But so I'm a little tired too. So I feel that.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you could make it. I'm glad we were able to sort of overcome all the scheduling and other shenanigans.
Yeah, me too. I'm really happy to be here. Thank you.
Right on. So, Caleb Endfield, welcome to the show. And why don't we I always just like to start off kind of by getting a little bit of background. So can you tell me a little bit about what it is you do in the education world?
Yeah. So my name is Caleb Endfield. I teach right now I do two things. I'm a behavioral health technician, and I teach STEM classes kind of as an enrichment class for an elementary school here on a Native American reservation, specifically the White Mountain Apache Reservation in Arizona.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And, but historically I've taught Spanish at a high school level, mm-hmm. and I've taught early childhood classes also. And I've also been involved as a daycare teacher. So I've kind of been all over the place as far as education goes.
Yeah, that's quite a broad range of assignments. So how did you wind up where you are?
Oh, so my first year out of college, I went and taught Spanish at the high school that I graduated from, which was a really, really great experience. But I was 22. The students mm-hmm. were 18. Because I taught seniors, and it was just a really weird situation where I didn't quite feel like I was at the right space in my life. So I decided to take a year off of teaching, and I went and just worked a regular job. I worked at Verizon for a year and just kind of lived the easy life, got used to not doing lesson plans and homework and grading, and it was real nice. But then, I don't know, I just got bored. So I decided to look around and see what opportunities were available. And there was this company on the reservation called White Mountain Apache Behavioral Health Services. And what they are is they're a behavioral health, I guess, organization that they offer counseling more than anything. Mm-hmm. But one of their jobs was a STEM and SEL instructor, STEM being science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, and SEL being social and emotional learning. Okay. So I applied for that job. And when I was going through the interview, I was kind of bewildered, is the way I'd put it, because it sounded really too good to be true. The way that the job functions is I'm hired by the ABHS organization, but I have a classroom in a school, and I kind of get to call the shots. I kind of get to tell the school what I will and won't do. Oh, so it was kind of, I didn't believe it. I thought it was going to be a lot different than that, but it's turned out to be completely true. So I've kind of built my own STEM program around things that I care about and want to do with these students. So it's really interesting.
So go ahead. Sorry.
And on top of that, I do like counseling on the side as a behavioral health technician. That's part of my job also.
Uh-huh.
Yes.
Wow. You enjoy the counseling part of it?
I actually really love it. I didn't think I would like it as much as I do. It's the paperwork's hard because you've got to document everything. Mm-hmm. And it feels like writing a paper every time you do it, because, you have a 30-minute conversation with a kid. You've got to write down everything that you talked about, basically, as well as their demeanor and the way they were reacting to things and anything of note, so that their therapist can go into it if they need to.
So what's the difference between like you and a therapist then?
I think it's licensing.
It's paperwork again.
I think it's paperwork for the most part. I mean, I don't want to downplay their job, but I feel like I basically do the same thing as the therapist, at least at my job.
Hmm.
I will go in and have a small group session with 4 or 5 kids or clients, not necessarily kids.
Hmm.
And we'll just, we could talk about anything. It could be life skills. It could be, I mean, one that's big for elementary school is hygiene. That's a life skill that we teach.
Hmm.
And we do it under the guise of our behavioral health side
Hmm.
rather than so that we can justify it to our job.
Right.
And so I do a lot of, I guess, the big difference is I'll do a lot more in the realm of life skills and emotional coping skills,
Right.
whereas they'll actually do like a counseling session and get to the root of what's causing these kids whatever is going on in their life at that point.
Right. So you're focusing more on sort of the results of perhaps some of the deep, the mental challenges that your students are going through. You're dealing with more like sort of the action on the outside.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. It's like let's say I had a client come to my classroom
Mm.
and she didn't necessarily have anything wrong with her that day. She was just there. What I would do is instead of trying to find a problem, that's not my job.
Yeah.
My job is more just to kind of make sure that I document the times we do have together.
Mm.
But in order to document it, and at least so it can be legal in the eyes of the state, is I have to do some sort of teaching. So I would talk about like a coping skill or something, or identifying feelings kind of thing. And it could be something as simple as, asking them how they're feeling and if they're having a bad day, talking about why it's okay to have a bad day and kind of things that we can do to get out of our funk.
Right.
It doesn't have to be this huge, profound thing for it to be behavioral health. It just
Right.
needs to be a listening ear for these kids.
Right. It's just some days it's just checking in, saying how you doing.
Exactly. Yeah. And I really like that part of it, actually. I really like that we have, I have a very specific and unique role in the school
Mm.
culture that's not typical in other schools. Um, so, like I said, I'm with a third party basically with that
Mm.
other company,
Yeah.
but I have a classroom in the school, and the way the school frames me as a teacher,
Yeah.
but the way that I frame myself to these students is as a teacher slash counselor, and I kind of put myself on their level all the time. I tell them all the time that it's a partnership, that I can't do what I do without them.
Right.
So yeah, so it's a really unique situation that I have, and I'm really, really enjoying it.
Yeah. It kind of sounds like you got to write your own ticket there in a lot of ways. It's pretty sweet.
Yeah, exactly. Like my STEM program, I basically have chosen everything that I want to teach, and I only do what I want to do, and
Right.
it's pretty nice.
Well, okay. So I want to come back to the STEM thing, but my raison d'être, as they say, is really I'm always trying to find new voices to bring on the show, and I've never talked to anyone who's worked on a reservation before.
Okay.
So, first of all, apologies to you and anyone else if I step in the wrong kind of terminology. I am. I have this podcast in part so that I can learn. So yeah, if I say the wrong thing, just say, "Hey, that's not how we say it. That's not what we call it." I'm perfectly fine with. I'd much rather be corrected than to be considered an idiot or something worse.
Absolutely.
So with that said, as we move forward, I mean, I don't know what the reservation system is like, how it compares to Canada. You're in Arizona, so. But could you paint maybe in broad strokes what the kind of situation is that you're in teaching on a reservation? What's that like?
Okay, so a reservation, obviously, it's kind of here in the United States anyway. I'm not really sure how First Nations work up in Canada.
Mm-hmm.
Personally, I have friends from up there, but I haven't really talked to them about it.
Yeah.
But the way it works here is it's kind of a sovereign part of a state. So we still fall under federal law, but
Mm-hmm.
a lot of state laws are kind of loosely abided by here, except for maybe on the highways, which are still state property.
Mm-hmm.
But everything outside of that, we're kind of doing our own thing. We have our own little form of government here, and our school is a public school, and it's funded through the state and the government. So it is public, but there are a lot of things that are done differently here because of the population. So it makes for interesting experiences in the classroom,
Okay.
I suppose.
Yeah.
Not so much for, it's not like, I mean, obviously we have different things like on Indigenous Peoples Day, we actually have performances and we have, there's those kind of things that come through.
Mm-hmm.
And, we have, I don't know, we have like Indian Club and stuff like that.
Right.
That's coupled in. But then the big things that I've noticed that are different, because what I did my practicum and my student teaching wasn't anything like here. And that's because here, the social problems are held a lot more in the open than anywhere else. So what I mean by that is when I did my student teaching, obviously, I don't know, like if a kid was, his family was, low income, or he just had something going on at home, there was a lot more done to make sure that nobody knew that. Whereas
Right.
here on the reservation, because everyone's low income, I mean, we have a 93% unemployment rate. Because everyone's a low income, it's not really taken seriously. No one really worries about sending their kids to school in nice clothes or any of that kind of stuff.
Right.
So my job as a counselor is it's hard because it's not, and I mean, I don't want to sound like I'm saying bad things about Native people right now, but
Well, no.
a lot of times, like it seems like things like hygiene and stuff fall through the cracks because honestly, it's just kind of the norm for these kids to just kind of, not worry about it.
Yeah.
So it's my job as a counselor. That's a lot of the stuff we talk about. That's a lot of the things we go into with them. And it's really, I mean, at least at the elementary level, I can't speak for the high school or junior high level, but that's kind of the stuff that we deal with on a day-to-day basis is like,
yeah.
And then also there's things like social issues here that they're everywhere. Don't get me wrong, but they're pretty incredibly impactful here. Like the 93% unemployment rate.
Yeah.
That's insane. That's nuts for a population to be, that's almost everyone doesn't have a job here.
Yeah. That's I can't even wrap my head around that.
Yeah. And so everyone here is either on some form of government assistance, or there's 8 people living in a 3-bedroom house under one person who has a job and they're taking care of everyone. Situations like that. So a lot of our social skills here on the reservation are also different too. A lot of the kids is social because, I don't know, boundaries just kind of fly out the window when you're living in a situation like that,
Yeah. Well, I mean, how do you deal with, I mean, you're in a career that is basically about defining people's futures. So, I mean, how do you make that work in that kind of environment? I mean, I'm making some assumptions maybe about culture, but so see, here's me trying not to step in and say something horrible.
No, just go for it, and we'll edit it out, man.
Well, I don't edit though. That's my problem. So I gotta be careful, but no, like the 93% unemployment. I mean, that level of unemployment that's going to affect your culture. I mean,
yeah, absolutely.
So that's going to be, I mean, one of my favorite sort of social phenomenon is the idea of norm shifting, right? Where basically it doesn't matter how crazy a situation gets. It doesn't take very long. And automatically just human nature is we just accept that as normal, whatever that happens to be, whether people are shooting at you or whether you're getting bombed all the time or whether 93% of the people in your community are unemployed. It becomes normal. So, I mean, you could argue, I think, quite simply that school is about preparing people for the future, preparing people for jobs. So, I mean, how does that work in that environment, or does it?
I think it does. I think, well, it has mixed results, obviously.
Yeah.
But so the STEM program that I work with is really unique because we're represented in every school on the reservation all the way through high school. So what I do at my level, I kind of based on what junior high does at their level so that I can prepare kids to go into their program, because our ideal situation is to eventually put those kids into a high school track that'll get them job ready. Because STEM is, I mean, maybe CTE is more close to like job readiness immediately after high school, but STEM can give you those skills too. You can get things like, we can help kids get different IT certifications or anything like that right after high school based on some of the skills we can provide.
Okay. Yeah.
So we're trying to change the culture around our kids right from the beginning and try to follow that up all the way through high school. So what I do at my level, so my third graders, we're using a program on a Raspberry Pi called Scratch 2.
Okay. Yeah.
And it teaches coding using blocks. So it's just the logic. You don't type any code out. It's just the logic behind coding.
Yeah.
So if thens and stuff like that we're teaching. And then with my fourth graders, we evolve into actually typing out Python code. So that's what we're doing now. We're typing Python code, and we're using microbits, which are, I don't know if you're familiar, but they're small.
I just got my first microbit like 2 weeks ago, and I got a kid just going nuts on it. He loves it.
Oh man, they are incredible. They are so cool.
Yeah.
And we start with small things like making, little badges that show your feelings, and then we're eventually going to go up to using them for data tracking. But and then my fifth grade, we transitioned into doing robotics using the Vex robotics system, the Vex IQ system.
Okay.
Which is, it's basically like glorified Legos, but there's a game every year that changes, and we go to these competitions to play this game and do these tournaments.
Yeah.
And the reason we do this is because here on the reservation, and I mean, anywhere, honestly, STEM is really underrepresented and underappreciated. So we're doing all of this so that we can try to put something else inside of these kids' heads besides what the norm is. Because like you said, the norm here is, I'll live with grandma until I'm 50, or I'll get food stamps forever. And there's nothing wrong with people in that situation. Sometimes you just need to be in that situation. It just happens. But it's a norm that we need to be shifting out of. And that's kind of what we're trying to do. We're trying to push these kids into looking at different things, because when you ask a kid here what their goal is, almost every time they want to be a professional athlete of some sort.
Right. And the stats on that are not so hot.
No, absolutely not. And so the way I try to do it is, I tell them, well, what are we doing to accomplish that goal? I try to push them into pursuing that goal because they should, they're 10-year-old kids. They should do what they love. But then I also tell them things like, well, all of these athletes went to college for something. None of them went straight in. That's not true, but I try to frame it that way. But none of them went straight into playing professional basketball, So I try to tell them, well, you got to find something you love so that you can do it in college while you're playing basketball. I try to frame it as a plus.
Yeah. You got to have a backup, right?
Yeah, exactly. Well, I don't call it a backup because I don't want them to. Yeah, but that's kind of my thought is this will be your career on the off chance you don't make it,
Yeah, or when a back injury takes you out in your third season, right? The millions aren't all in anymore.
Exactly.
You got to do something, yeah. So the main kind of mindset that you're trying to instill in them is really to think beyond their lives there on the reservation.
Yeah, which is really hard because for some of these kids, they've never left the reservation. I was very fortunate in high school I went to a ton of different states with school activities. I went to school on the reservation as well. And my family fortunately has been educated. I'm a third generation college student. So we traveled and stuff, and I got out there and got to see a lot of the world outside of the reservation. So when I transitioned from being a high school student on the reservation to being a college student in a city, I knew kind of the challenges that would come with it.
Yeah.
Not academically, but socially. But that's a really big thing for our population as well, is the social challenges that come with leaving the reservation because everything's so extremely different.
Well, let's dig into that. I like that. So you grew up on the reservation, or the reservation, or our reservation?
I grew up on my reservation, so the Fort Apache Indian Reservation.
Okay. So, and you said you had the benefit, I guess you say, of being a third generation college educated student. But was the situation you've described about where you are now, is that similar to what you grew up in?
No. So my situation was a lot different than I witnessed a lot of it because I had friends that were in those situations. But my situation at home, I had a single mom, but she worked all the time, so
Yeah.
I didn't really go without a lot of things during. I never really struggled like a lot of these kids are struggling.
Mhm.
I never really had issues where I'm wearing shoes that are 3 years old and don't fit anymore, or
Yeah.
stuff like that. Like if I needed something, I got it. Is what I'm
Mhm.
trying to say.
Yeah.
So I didn't have the same struggles, and also with the college education part, my family, my mom is educated in early childhood, and she also is a high school teacher and is a huge advocate for education. So, I've been reading since I was 5 years old, and
Right.
that's all on her teaching me before. So I just had a lot of different values put into me that weren't in every home.
Right. Right. Well, I mean, you talk about social challenges and that sort of thing too. Like, what kind of social challenges are there for a First Nations person, going off the reservation for the first time?
Oh, so that's well, on the reservation, everybody knows everybody.
Hmm.
It's, small town. Even so, we have a lot of different communities, but everybody knows everybody within the communities. It's just, and also, like I said, there's a lot of autonomy with the way that the reservations run.
Hmm.
So we don't necessarily have the same kind of restrictions. We don't have HOAs and stuff like that, or, you
HOA?
know, homeowners associations or anything like that
Oh,
on the
okay. Yeah.
reservation.
Right.
It's kind of, and a lot of the housing on the reservation is government subsidized housing.
Right.
It's Section 8 basically. So there's a lot of challenges that come with moving off where you're paying bills for the first time, real bills, or you're not getting guaranteed healthcare for the first time because there might not be an IHS where you're going, you
Right.
know. So there's a lot of different things like that, but also our social skills here on the reservation, there's a very unique way that Native American people talk. I
Hmm.
don't know if you've been around Indigenous people, but
Hmm.
people who learn English as a second language from whatever their language is will
Hmm.
very typically put the emphasis in strange places, or will leave sounds out of words,
Hmm.
or occlude sounds at the end of sentences, even because that's just not something that's typical in their first language. And that can be said for everything.
Hmm.
But the problem is with it being Native American, my challenge when I went out anyway was I don't speak Apache, but I grew up around people that did, so I
Hmm.
spoke kind of some broken English when I went out to college,
Right.
and it was never addressed here on the reservation because
Yeah.
that's just the norm. And
Right.
when I went out to college, I kind of developed this quote unquote white accent that people around here call it,
Uh-huh.
um,
Yeah. Yeah.
as a kind of survival mechanism, survival technique, because my my professors and stuff like that were like, well, your writing doesn't sound like English, doesn't sound normal. And I had a public speaking class and they worked on that with me. They told me, they're like, this isn't how people talk. This isn't how you speak in a professional setting.
Uh,
Yeah. So,
how did you feel about that? Like, was that like trying to let go of some of your culture or?
oh no, I mean, I didn't think anything of it personally. I knew when I left that I had some stuff that I needed to work on.
Oh, okay.
I knew that I wasn't prepared for the real world. That's just the realistic.
Hmm.
That's just me critiquing myself when I left. But the way I feel about it is, I mean, it kind of hit me pretty personally, actually. To be honest, I was I don't know. I was always an A student in high school and really had no problem with academia. But
Hmm.
that's under there's I had so much help that I didn't realize I had. I would go to tutoring things, or I would go to,
Hmm.
I would be able to use different resources that were put here just for me, just for
Yeah.
at like a native school,
Yeah.
But when I went out to college, all those things were gone. Tutoring cost money. There wasn't any sort of free resources besides the library, which I didn't know how to use because
Yeah.
I didn't ever go to the library as a kid
Hmm.
because, I mean,
Yeah.
in high school it wasn't required, and
Not many kids like
so
to spend their days in the library. I get
yeah,
that.
exactly.
And they weren't
So
nearly as cool then as they are now either.
no,
So
I mean, libraries
yeah,
now aren't even libraries anymore. They're
no.
just computer labs.
Well, computer labs and maker spaces and all sorts of crazy stuff. So
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So there's there's this divide, it seems, between sort of the world, the reservation, and then the world, just for lack of a better term, outside the reservation.
Yeah, there really is.
Yeah. So, I mean, how do you, man, I got two different ways I want to approach this. I mean, one is, I mean, where I come in Canada, I mean, we have this really terrible history of like reservations, residential schools where, you know, kids were literally torn from their homes and put into these schools where they weren't allowed to speak their native language, and they were forced to learn, not forced to, but they were taught, you know, very much, you know, the white kind of culture and Western learning. I mean, there's that kind of hanging over our head in terms of in Canada. I don't know if it's the same thing in the States.
Yeah, absolutely. There is. It's we had the same history of boarding schools, kids taken away from their parents, their haircut, their culture, you know, kill the Indian, save the man kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah. So there's that. But I mean, then so do you ever feel like, you know, going off the reservation and kind of doing, you know, these university or college education things, is that influence, that decision ever sort of, do you ever weigh that in the balance with the historicity of sort of white education in a native context?
Can you repeat the question? I'm
sorry,
really trying to digest it all.
I got a little tangled up in that. I guess, do you ever feel like you're being called to leave your culture behind when you're leaving the reservation?
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. It's a lot to digest.
Yeah.
And so I don't know. That's really interesting. So for me, I have a pretty strong background in my culture. My sisters went through the sunrise dance, which is one of my sisters did. She went through the sunrise dance, which is something that happens when a girl, it's basically a girl becoming a woman, like a ceremony for,
like
you know,
a rite of passage sort of thing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You know, and then I also went to like local powwows and stuff. And so I was really kind of into it for a long time, and I still am. And when I went away, I don't think that I was being pulled out of my culture, but I think that I kind of fell out of it almost. No one was forcing me to leave, but there was just not the exposure. So I guess in a way, kind of you are, because you're forced to go somewhere that your culture is not represented, because I can't succeed on my reservation. This is without going to college, but I can't go to college on my reservation, you know?
Right.
So it's a really weird situation wherein you have to leave your culture behind almost. And I mean, you can still go home on the weekends and all that, but you start picking up other cultures when you're out there.
And I guess that's the same for, you know, anyone who chooses to say study overseas, or, you know, if I choose to leave, I got to travel a lot further though to get away from my culture. So there is that, but
but I don't know. Like for me, when I went to college, it was a really interesting situation because I grew up on the reservation, and I'm only a quarter Apache. I'm half Mexican though. Okay. So I felt like I was culture starved for that because I didn't get exposure to that. It was my dad, but he left when I was like 9 or 10. I don't remember exactly. So when I went out to college, I really got into that. I kind of threw myself full force into like being Mexican, you know, learning about a lot of mestizo and stuff like that. Took Spanish classes. I learned Spanish. Yeah. I got a Latin American studies minor, and I did everything I could, including studying abroad in like Costa Rica and stuff like that, to learn more about like being Latino and stuff like that. So
wow,
it was interesting. I took the leaving the reservation as an invitation to get myself outside of my culture. So that's why I'm having a hard time answering your question, because I don't know if it's like that for everyone. I really doubt it though.
Well, you've got definitely a bit of a different background. That's, you know, everyone walks their own path, and I'm just I was interested in yours. So, but let's bring it back around to your students. I mean, that's kind of what we're supposed to be here for. Sure. So, I mean, I guess the thing I still find the most intriguing though is that sort of that tension between sort of, you know, the outside world and the reservation world, and you're trying to, you know, get these kids ready to.
We're trying to bridge the gap.
Yeah. So
that's the way I put it, a lot of people is I'm trying to bridge the gap between what my kids know here and what they need to know there.
Right. So what do you do then to bridge the gap? Okay, we're going to get back to me and Caleb in a minute. But first, I want to tell you about Park Power. They're a provider of electricity and natural gas in Alberta that offers low rates, awesome service, and profit sharing with local charities. In Alberta, you get to choose who to buy your energy from, and Park Power has low overhead, and chances are you'll save money if you switch. You can find out how much money you would save by visiting parkpower.ca and plugging your numbers into the Alberta Energy Savings Calculator. If you decide to switch, it's easy. Nothing changes about your service, only the price you pay. Learn more at parkpower.ca. All right, let's get back to me and Caleb. Right. So what do you do then to bridge the gap?
Well, I'm pretty limited actually. I see every student in the capacity of being a teacher. So I'll do STEM lessons with every classroom in the school. If it's when they need something, if they need to hit a certain standard or something, they just tell me what they need, and I'll come back to them a week later and, go in there and do my thing.
Right.
But if the other part is the stuff like robotics and coding, it's enrichment. So I only see the kids that are doing well as far as testing goes. And it's an after school program, so that limits it even more. So I don't see all the kids. And on top of that, in my capacity as a behavioral health technician, we have kids that have to volunteer for our services. So they have to have their parents sign them up to be spoken to by me as a counselor.
You can't just kind of pull them aside and.
Yeah, it can't be anyone. And it's so it makes it interesting because it really limits as far as how I can bridge that gap with those kids. So if they're a client, bridging the gap is becoming easier and easier every year. Last year we did robotics tournaments, and we had to leave the reservation a lot for it. Yeah. We went to the state capitol in Phoenix, and that was our state tournament because we had won a local tournament. Nice. And we hosted a tournament, and we had people that weren't from the reservation come and talk to us. And then we went to a tournament that was held like 30 miles away, but it was off the reservation. So, and those tournaments are social situations for my kids. And I framed them that way when I was teaching them about these tournaments. I told them these are situations where you're going to need to talk to people that aren't from here. Yeah. So it's going to be really important to be on top of your body language and your eye contact. And because growing up on the reservation, sometimes when you're talking to an elder, someone who's older than you don't make eye contact. It's disrespectful, So that's stuff that I've got to try to teach these kids. Or when someone like a kid is talking to you, you turn to them because that's positive body language. Or you nod your head when they're talking so they know you're listening, It's little things like that I'm trying to put into them at this level, these are things that we do without thinking, Yeah. If someone addresses me, I turn to them, and I obviously, if I don't say anything, I show that I'm listening with my body language. It's just the way we function as adults, as human adults. But a lot of that stuff is outside of our cultural norm here.
That's, I can't even imagine what that would be like, just to be just teaching something. I don't want to say basic, but that sort of intrinsic to. Yeah.
Well, it's, the intrinsic part is the part that's interesting. That's the operative term, because here, our intrinsic teaching is that you don't look at your elders when they're talking to you. You don't make the eye contact. That's just how we learned when we were growing up.
Yeah.
So that body language and that eye contact and the tone of voice and stuff like that is all different for us. Like I said, when someone spoke to us, they had a different tone of voice. Their emphasis was in the wrong parts of words, or their inflection was strange because of where we're from. Right. So that's the way we all developed.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, when I was saying intrinsic, I mean it's intrinsic to my culture. I guess I wasn't. Oh yeah, It's not like there's something missing from them. It's just that their intrinsicness is different. So there's me stepping in it a little bit. Yeah,
for everyone else. Yeah, no, I understand, and I don't think you stepped in it at all. I was just trying to reiterate the point, I guess. I think you've done a great job.
Oh, thanks, Caleb. But, I also try and bear in mind that there's at least one person out there who's probably just waiting for me to slip up so they can send an angry email. So, just trying to cover my butt. Let's just anger someone right now. Let's do it.
Yeah. No, but yeah, it's so that's kind of the way I tackle that. But also during the summer, we do a summer program.
Mhm.
And this is the really fun part of my job, actually.
Yeah.
And in the summer program, I'm not a teacher at all. I'm just a counselor. It's like a camp counselor kind of situation where the kids show up and we do classes with them 3 days a week, Monday through Wednesday, and it's only clients, so only kids that have signed up with their parents' permission. But we'll do classes like we'll have a STEM class, a physical education class, a cultural class,
cool.
writing class, just simple things. And it's only for half days. And, we'll do little life skills teaching throughout the day, car safety, stranger safety, whatever,
Right.
Whatever's relevant for that time of year, whatever we're doing. And then on Thursdays, based on the behavior, we'll take all the kids on a trip. And these trips are very, very often very far away from the reservation.
Right.
So a lot of our life skills the day before the trip or the day of the trip are talking about etiquette in public places. And I really think those are more effective than the robotics tournaments, but the robotics tournaments are what I have access to. Right. But kind of, the way you carry yourself, the way you dress, the way, we're going to an aquarium, you're not going to wear open-toed shoes, and, it's just the basic things that seem so obvious to you, Yeah. They seem obvious to me when I talk about them with my kids, but I have to be reminded sometimes that it's not obvious, it's not normal for these kids to be in these situations. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think, I learned from, I done a little bit of international travel. I was actually in Costa Rica for a few months, nice. A number of years back. I was doing some mission work, but, I kind of learned that, your one's culture is it's never obvious to you when you're in it. Until you get into someone else's culture, then you see someone doing something you consider like, something like conversation, totally normal. You think they'll you just have a conversation. That's how it's done. And then you see it done differently. And you're like, oh, wait a minute. There's more than one way to do this. Like, I remember my big moment for me was when I was in San Jose in Costa Rica. And it is normal there, at least at the time of year that I was there, to just throw firecrackers in the middle of the day. You just light one up and just toss it. That's really great. It's not the first time you hear it, because you're just walking around. You hear sounds like someone shooting a shotgun, and just like, what is that? It's like, oh, it's just firecrackers. People just throw them around sometimes. Oh man, yeah, no, I'm no stranger to culture shock. I travel quite a bit internationally. Yeah, that's a really good. That's a really good way to put it, actually. You don't realize how weird you are, how weird your culture is, until you're put into someone else's culture. Because that's kind of how I felt when I went to college. I had a roommate that wasn't native. Yeah, obviously, he was actually Chinese. He spoke Mandarin and did karate and everything. He was like the super stereotypical guy. Yeah. So it was really great experience, and we're still real good friends. But yeah, just some of the things that he did that were super different than the way that I did things, And I can't put anything in specific. It was like small things. The way he stored things, or the way he sat was really weird. He would sit in his chair with his legs crossed, or just really different things like that. And that's just individualisms, even not even cultural, but yeah, you don't realize just how weird your personal culture is until you get out there and see someone else's. And it's going to see the counter examples. Yeah. So bringing it back full circle, you're teaching on this reservation. You're 93% unemployment. You've got pretty widespread poverty. But you're doing some really cool things. I mean, how would you describe the overall environment of your school, or to put it in a finer point? I mean, are you hopeful for the future of your students? Yes, I am, because, well, I mean, I don't know. I feel like if you go through our program, maybe we don't get you job skills. Maybe we don't get you ready for work immediately after college or high school, or maybe you're not necessarily college ready, but you've been exposed to so much more than your peer, that you're as ready as you can be. Because like I said, even when I went out, even with all of my traveling and my exposure and stuff, I wasn't ready for college. Absolutely not. I failed a class my first semester,
Uh-huh.
and I just had a super rough time, super homesick the whole time, and I had big issues with time management and stuff like that, as a lot of young college students do. But
Yeah.
um, it's just I wasn't ready at all, even for the workload. At my high school, we didn't do homework at all because they knew it wouldn't get done, so they did everything in school.
Mm-hmm.
So there was nothing about my high school that prepared me for college. And I feel like going through my program, or our program, our STEM program, is exposing you to some of those things that are maybe you don't recognize it now, but when you get to college, it's the extra work that we do after school that's the stuff that's gonna prepare you for kind of knowing that your personal time is not always your personal time when you're an adult.
Yeah. 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 I get that.
So I don't think they're necessarily going to be job or college ready or anything like that, but
mm-hmm.
I don't think anyone really is. I think you hit 18 and then the world falls on you.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good way of putting it. That's a really good way of putting it. I mean, I grew up, I did like all my AP classes in high school and did great. I was the kid who freaked out if I got less than 80% on anything.
Uh-huh.
And then I got to university and first set of midterms were all like in the low 50s.
Mm-hmm.
And I failed the course in my second year, and because yes, like you say, I was not ready. I was not ready, not even close. And I know some people are, they're just born ready and whatever. I can't stand those people, but anyway, so a lot of what you said actually really resonates too. So you do the best you can as an educator, you get the kids ready, you give them all the life skills they need. And then, then they're 18 and the world falls on them.
Yeah, no, that's exactly how it is. It's kind of, I guess sorry about that. No. I guess more than anything, what we're trying to do, or what I'm trying to do, is give them the skills to rebound from the world falling on them.
Yeah.
Because when I was a high school teacher, my seniors, man, I would sit there and at lunchtime they'd come and sit in my class, or I'd go out and have duty and we'd talk. And towards the end of the year, they would be asking me kind of what to expect. And I'm like, whatever I tell you is not going to happen at all. 100%. You're going to have your own fight when you get there. You're going to have your own issues, You're not going to have the same issue with me where the showers on my floor didn't work, so we had to go into the girls' restroom. It's not going to be the same. 100%. Yeah. Everything's going to be different, and every challenge is going to feel like the hardest thing in the world because mom and dad's not there to back you up. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I just try to tell them, like, just try to get a little more autonomous now, try to get more independent now before you go, start cooking your own dinners, start getting a job now.
Yeah. Cooking class should be required for every single student. Cause
and basic finance as well. Oh man. Cause I went out and my scholarship money came in and it was dumb. That was the first time I'd ever had money in my life.
Didn't know what to do with it.
No, I mean, I survived, but it didn't go well.
I feel like we're segueing into another podcast altogether here. So, well, anyway, speaking of podcasts, not mine but yours, we should probably give that like an official plug here. So, why don't you tell me a little bit, if you got some time? Am I taking up too much of your time?
Yeah, no, I'm set for the rest of the day. I'm already done with my podcast for today. So
so tell me a little bit about your podcast.
So I run a podcast with a friend. He's a coworker. His name's Jason, mm-hmm. and we call it Nomadcast. And we call it that because it's kind of a dual meaning. It's got a human element to it, Humans mm-hmm. at one point were all nomads, blah blah blah. Mm-hmm. But also it plays into the Native American like nomadic situation, because the way we're framing the podcast is it's a cultural podcast, the conversation about culture all the time, but we want to highlight, whenever possible, Native American talent. Mm-hmm. So it's really laid back. It's just conversation. We're not looking for facts and figures. We want the layman to be able to understand it.
Right.
So when we just had a conversation with a PhD just the other day, well, two of them actually now, but we weren't asking them for historical facts or figures or any of that kind of stuff. we're just having a conversation about what they care about and why they care about it and why it's important for them.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a really good way to get a personal look at some of these people, we think, because we just talked to someone named Lee Francis. He's the owner of a Native American publishing company that does mostly pop culture stuff like comic books. And we were talking to him and almost every interview that I've ever seen him in, people are talking about like the indigenous struggle and the blah, 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 blah. But we kind of put him on a different level where we were talking about like the art and the passion and about him, we were just talking about why he loves to do what he does. So naturally it got into talking about being in Native American and loving that. But it's, it was more personal for him, and it really showed. There's a lot of times in that conversation where he was getting really passionate about something, and he was telling us about how his personal experiences in that were really, really profound for him.
Awesome. And if people want to listen to that, how would they find it?
So you can find it on Twitter at Nomadcast Show. Pretty simple. We're pretty small right now. We've just got our 4th episode recorded today. So we don't have much to go on, but what we do have is really good. Yeah. I think our first guest was a robotics coach from here in Arizona that does robotics in the Apache reservation, just like I do. Okay. But he took his kids to the world championships, which is in a different state. And they flew for the first time and stuff. And we talked a lot about he'd actually probably be a really good guest for you, because we talk a lot about what you were asking about today. He just has way more experience with it all.
What's his name?
His name is Nakota.
Okay.
Nakota Altaha. He's not even a teacher. He just does robotics coaching, but he talks about changing the culture around here and being inspired by these students. And man, he's an incredible individual, man. He just blows me away every time I talk to him.
Right on. Well, I mean, at least give a listen to that episode. I honestly haven't listened to your show yet, so
it's okay. It's nothing special. We just do it because we love it.
Same. We got the exact same motivation.
Yeah,
love doing it.
I just want to talk to people that care about what they're doing.
Absolutely. I hear you.
Yeah.
I hear you.
I just
go ahead.
I just frame it as an excuse to talk to people that inspire me. So
absolutely. Well, that's why I do what I do too. So
yeah.
Awesome. Hey, so Nomadcast, is that on Apple Podcasts, or where else?
You can get it on Google Play and Stitcher. We have we host it on Buzzsprout, so it's nomadcast.buzzsprout.com.
Okay.
If you go to the Twitter, we link every episode, and also our website's in the link. But Google Play, Stitcher, and hopefully soon Apple Podcasts. You can. But I don't know. I don't know if I care enough to fight that fight. Well, I'm going to hang out with my girlfriend for a while, so I will see you later.
All right. Thank you so much, Caleb. It's been a blast.
Yeah. Take it easy.
Yeah, you too. Bye. This week's episode of Ed is brought to you by Back to School Again. It's a podcast about people who made the decision in midlife to return to school, either to pursue a new type of career or to augment their current career, or just for the sheer challenge of learning something new. It chronicles the personal journey of host Katrina Ingram, who is back in school after more than 2 decades away. The podcast features conversations with a wide range of midlife learners who are currently enrolled in post-secondary studies or have recently completed a post-secondary degree. You can find the episodes and show notes at backtoschoolagain.ca. The podcast is, of course, available on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and most other podcatchers. Back to School Again is presented by Norquest College and is an affiliated member of the Alberta Podcast Network. Find it and our other affiliates at albertapodcastnetwork.com. And if you want to get in touch or you'd like to be a guest on this show, you can email me at theedpodcast@gmail.com or hit me up on Twitter at theedpodcast. And if you want to listen to more of Ed, you can head over to the website, theedpodcast.podbean.com, or find us on Apple Podcasts. Just search up Ed Conversations. Ed can also be heard on Voice Ed Radio. It's 24-hour internet broadcasting devoted to the best ideas in education. Just head over to voiced.ca. So, on behalf of myself and Caleb, thank you so much for listening, and we'll catch you next time.